Hey everyone, welcome to a new malicious compliance video. I hope you had a great day.
The first story is called, Everyone Learns on the Job. I've worked as a temp in construction for almost 3 years. I've had offers of direct employment by some companies I've worked with, but honestly, I love being a temp. Anytime I get bored, I can change jobs, within reason, so I've tried a bit of everything. And I like to collect a piece of workwear from every company I enjoyed working for. Now recently, I've been doing nights, which I don't mind at all. But it's been a bit stormy and another one of the temps has come down with the flu. They showed up to work really sick. I asked what they were doing there when they so obviously were sick, and they proceeded to tell me that after contacting the boss to say they were ill. But the boss apparently called non-stop and basically harassed them into going to work. I absolutely loathe people like that. He is a recent addition to our company and constantly contacts the team, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, to check that we're going in. This is annoying, to say the least, when you're trying to sleep during the day. But to berate an employee into working when they feel so terrible is not only wrong but illegal, especially in these bizarre times. Add the fact that this was the coldest, windiest and wettest night we'd had so far, and I was unimpressed. I've been having a lot of contact with lawyers over the last couple of years helping my partner out, and I'm an incredibly fast reader. I hadn't thought much about the job we were doing before this, but the next day I went online and downloaded every manual that had anything to do with the company we were currently contracted into and the job we were doing. It was over 1,000 pages of mostly acronyms and legal jargon, but anything that didn't make sense or that had a loophole, I took note of and contacted the traffic authorities and current contracted company for clarification. After just a couple of hours, I contacted my office to see where my boss and the big boss were. Luckily, they were both in, which was unheard of. And they were happy to wait 30 minutes for me to come down. The big boss knows me pretty well by now and knows I'll try anything once just for the experience. I've worked through broken bones and all sorts of personal tragedy just for the sake of the job and the people I'm working with. But if something rubs me the wrong way, I will be the most spiteful, petty, evil little thorn you have ever met. The new boss wasn't ready for it. I started by saying that I didn't like how my coworker was treated, and that I thought it was extremely unreasonable during the current times. The coworker is barely 18 and definitely felt bullied into coming in when they shouldn't have, putting the rest of us in danger of getting sick. The boss defended his actions, and I let him ramble until he was done, then gave them 28 instances where the job we were doing was in violation of our country's employment or traffic laws, and a further 14 violations of the current company's regulations. The big boss just laughed, knowing there was no way I was working with that many violations, and the new boss wasn't getting his all my workers went to work with no problems this month bonus. After all this, it took almost 2 weeks to sort out and fix all legal issues, by which time all the other temps had other work to be doing and absolutely none of them wanted to go back to that particular site, and our contracts all state we absolutely do not have to undertake any job offered to us if we don't want to. I took a week off just for giggles, and the new boss is still learning who he can screw and who he can't. I was having a beer with one of the owners a few days ago, and he said the new boss groans loud enough to be heard next door when I call, which is a little sad because if he hadn't tried to cut corners, he wouldn't have gotten screwed so badly. Well, everyone learns on the job. The next story is called, It's Too Busy. I've been working at this gas station and car wash for about 2.5 years. No, gas stations don't pay very well, so I actually have 2 part-time jobs. That's the way it is, with the cost of living in this city. You're either rich or you work 2 jobs. At the gas station, I work a few nights graveyard shift and weekends, since most folks want Saturday and Sunday off. One nice thing about those shifts is, I usually work alone. I'd like to think the management knows and trusts me to handle anything. Especially on weekends when it can get pretty crazy. Lately, I've even been given the task of training new hires. But this one girl, I don't think she's gonna work out. She's a lazy Lucy. Look, I'm not quick to judge people, but when she actually bragged that at her other graveyard job, she sleeps on duty, then I didn't have high hopes. We've worked together for a few weekend shifts now, with her taking off early because you're here so I don't have to stay all day, right? Well, whatever, we weren't going to work together in the future anyway. I'd heard that she was going to be part of the staff at a different, bigger location. Last weekend, Lucy was off the schedule, so I assumed that she'd been placed at the other gas station, but this weekend, she was back on the same shift with me. More training, perhaps? But okay, I could use the help on those hustle days. Saturday, I go in for the afternoon shift, and the morning coworker I was relieving says Lucy had been there already, a few minutes ago, and then just left. When Lucy had heard that I was coming in too, she announced that 2 people weren't necessary and promptly gave herself the day off. Of course, I contacted the manager because this was getting ridiculous. After talking to Lucy, the manager gave me the whole story. Lucy was supposed to work at the other gas station, but there had been a slight schedule printing mix-up, what with Lucy being new and all. While it's understandable if maybe she went to the wrong place, but why didn't she call or head over to the right location? Because she didn't want to. Lucy said that the other station was too busy and there was too much work to do. I'm not making that up, that's a direct quote. Why does she think we hired her? Reasonably, the manager had listened to Lucy's explanation for not working with me on Saturday, that 2 people weren't necessary. So the manager asks me, "Do you want to come in tomorrow or would you like it off, and Lucy will cover for you?" I haven't had a Sunday off since I started working here. So, I said see you Monday. And now Lucy is scheduled for every weekend at that busy location, for as long as she plans on working for this gas company, which shouldn't be that long. The third story is called, You Asked For It. I was granted a legal name change a few months ago. Simply put, I hated the unique spelling of my first name and wanted to ditch my surname. Didn't have much trouble updating my name at most places. Social Security, driver's license, insurance, that stuff. No bumps in the road until I got to the very last thing to update, my credit card. I use this particular credit card a lot. I'm self-employed and use this card to rack up travel points for flights, hotels, and rental cars. However, if you've ever checked into a hotel or picked up a rental car, you'll know the name on the card must match the name on the ID. So, I call the credit card company. I'm told that I have to fill out a certain document and mail that in, alongside a copy of the court document, which is fair enough. 2 weeks go by and I hear nothing, so I call again. They say they haven't received it. I'm then informed they have a fax number that I can use to send in the documentation. So I fax in everything necessary using an app on my phone. Another 2 weeks go by, still nothing, and I call again. Same spiel on the other end of the phone. Please mail or fax. You get the deal. I once more did what they asked, yet another week passes. I call, again. I'm told the same script. I'm starting to get annoyed by this point. I have an upcoming trip planned and need the card to match my ID. So I ask to speak to a manager. They tell me that a manager is not being currently available. So I fax in the document and court order once again. However, this time I decided I was just going to keep hitting send after the previous one had shown as delivered. I thought I'd repeat the process a few times, just to make sure they got it. After sending it 25 times the first day, I got no response. The next day, I was sitting on my couch watching football. I thought I'd send the fax a few more times. By the time I realized how many times I'd hit send, I had sent it over 130 times. The very next afternoon, I got a call from a manager at the credit card company. She sounded quite angry over the phone. I just played dumb. You guys asked me to fax it in. I got my updated card in the mail 3 days later. The last story is called, Fault Unresolved. My dad was working at a company in the 1980s. Before he was hired, that company had acquired a company in another state. The employees of the other company were told not to worry, that everything would remain the same, no change to the status quo. The owner was changing, but everything else would be the same. A few months later, they announced that they were moving the company from the other state to the state my dad lived in and merging them. So anyone who didn't want to move, well, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So there were some hard feelings, and many of them reasonably enough had a rather bad attitude about things. My dad was hired after all this had happened, but he was local to the city they got merged to, So as far as many of the people were concerned, he was part of the enemy. The custom operating system that the company that was bought had developed was such that it resided in a specific region of memory with a hard-coded address. So it couldn't be expanded in size, because applications running were all loaded in memory above that address. To change that, it would have required way too much time. One day, my dad needed something from those guys, so he went to ask them. Jim was the systems engineer, and Harold was the applications engineer, and they shared an office. Dad walked into the office, and Jim was already visibly in a bad mood. Jim needed to make a modification to the system, but that would cause it to exceed the maximum size by something like 4 bytes, so a very tiny amount. He was griping about it. Dad said, "Well, you have a string of characters that you display whenever you issue a system error. Dad thinks it was something like system error. So maybe just shorten that string and it should free up the space." Jim replied, "What should I shorten it to?" This was irritating. Dad already did the hard part, thinking of a way to free up space. What was it to and what they shortened it to? They always gave Dad a hard time about anything and everything. So Dad said, "Shorten it to FU." Jim asked, "What does that stand for?" And Dad replied, "FU," and walked away. Fast forward a few months. The OS had never been documented by the guys that wrote it, and the current company wanted it to be documented. So they assigned Barry to document it. One day, Barry walked into my dad's office and says, "Bill, I need your help." "Oh yeah? How can I help you?" "Well, I have a question about the OS, and Jim said to ask you." "What's that?" "What does FU stand for?" So my dad told him. Barry was shocked and said, "I can't put that into the documentation." "Sorry, that's not my problem." I was kidding Jim, but it was his choice to use that. It took Barry several weeks to think over the whole situation, but one day, he walked into my dad's office and said, "I know what FU stands for. It stands for fault unresolved." And so that was that. Of course, most users who read that in the documentation probably said, "Yeah, sure it does." Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the video in the comments below. Have a great day. Bye bye.